Welcome to NFL Daily by Chat Sports. Chase Senior here with you. No matter where you are, how you're tuned in, we appreciate you for making today's show a part of your day. On the docket, NFL predictions. The preseason starting to wind down. Training camp pretty much in the rear view. Regular season going to be here before we know it. So we're going to predict every team that makes the 2023 NFL playoffs. First, though, if you're excited for the start of the regular season, I can't wait. All of us here at Chat Sports are amped up. I want you to hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. Now, obviously, with step number one to really set the foundation here for which teams are going to make the playoffs for the 2023 season, we take a look back at what transpired in 2022. Let's go division by division here. AFC East, pretty good division that this year I think is going to be really, really good with Aaron Rodgers going to the New York Jets. Any team here could be competitive this year for sure. And then you look at the Buffalo Bills and Miami Dolphins, two teams that could be division winners. New York Jets could win this division. I don't think the Patriots are quite in that category, but with Bill Belichick, a really good defense. I like what they did in the draft, especially on the defensive side of the football. Could they be better than 8 and 9? So which teams are going to come out of the AFC East? I think that's a pretty good question going into this year. To the AFC West, Kansas City Chiefs, the defending Super Bowl champions after taking down the Philadelphia Eagles, 14-3 last year, number one seed in the conference. Los Angeles Chargers, they always seem to start slow. This year, though, there's really no excuse. They have a good roster on both sides of the ball. They should not have lost that game to the Jacksonville Jaguars, but Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence able to mount that comeback. And then you look at the Las Vegas Raiders and Denver Broncos, 6-11, 5-12 respectively last year. Vegas, I think, has an underrated roster, and I think that Jimmy Garoppolo could be an upgrade over a player like Derek Carr just because he understands Josh McDaniel's scheme a little bit better, whereas it seemed to be a little bit too much for Derek Carr. And Sean Payton, he has already changed the culture for the Denver Broncos. Can Russell Wilson make a leap forward under Sean Payton, who every quarterback that he's been with has been able to be successful, and they've won a lot of games. To the AFC North, Cincinnati Bengals, another good AFC championship game against the Kansas City Chiefs. This time, though, it was not Burrowhead in Kansas City, as Patrick Mahomes was able to take down Joe Burrow for the first time in his career. Baltimore Ravens were without Lamar Jackson the last several weeks of the season. Still made the playoffs, though, at 10-7. This division, like the AFC East, I think is pretty stacked top to bottom. Wouldn't surprise me if any of these teams end up making the playoffs. In the AFC South, that's not the same case. Jacksonville Jaguars made it last year as they went on a furious run late in the season, finished 9-8. I think they're going to be a lot better this year. I think every other team is going to be bottom of the barrel in the AFC. I do like Mike Vrabel. He always has his team ready to play. But have they gotten that much better from being 7-10 last year? Is DeAndre Hopkins going to really move the needle all that much? To the NFC now. Philadelphia Eagles. They represented the NFC in the Super Bowl, 14-3. Had the NFL's top record against playoff teams last year. Can they duplicate that success? Dallas Cowboys, really solid season last year at 12-5, but as Dallas always does, they came up short in the playoffs. New York Giants, first year under Brian Daboll, brought the most and maximized Daniel Jones as a player. Bringing in a weapon like Darren Waller could really help the G-men this upcoming season. And then the Washington Commanders on Friday, naming Sam Howell as their quarterback. I'm not a believer in that organization or that Sam Howell can be the guy, especially with that bad offensive line. NFC West. San Francisco started the year 3-4. They did not lose again until the NFC Championship game when Brock Purdy injured his elbow. A team to look out for, in my opinion, in the NFC this year, Seattle Seahawks. Really like what Pete Carroll and that organization have done over the last couple of years in the draft. And last year, a lot of strides forward. A lot of people thought they were going to be one of the worst teams in the National Football League. They were not. Rams could be one of the worst teams in the league. Arizona Cardinals. So for me, two-team division here. NFC North. Does anybody really know what's going to happen? Justin Fields was 31st in completion percentage last year, but a big part of that offensive line was horrendous and didn't have a lot of good weapons. Chicago, if they win this division, it would not shock me, although I don't like the overall talent on that team still at offensive line. How did the Green Bay Packers respond after moving on from Aaron Rodgers? Up and down reports as to what Jordan Love has been able to do in training camp. I really like the Detroit Lions. I like the foundation, the culture that Dan Campbell has built. They finished the year really hot last year. Jared Goff played some of the best football of his career. But with Detroit, they have not won the division in 30-plus years. Can they win it this year? It's just been a lot of bad luck for Detroit, and their organization was run poorly for a really long time. They're on the right track now. Then the Minnesota Vikings. They won double-digit games, I believe, last year by one score or less. To repeat that type of trend, it's very difficult to do. So there's going to be some regression from 13-4, but they were and still are a very good team. NFC South. This is probably the only division in football where I have no idea what happens because it is just full of mediocre teams. Can the Falcons get anything from Desmond Ridder? And if they do, they might win this division. New Orleans Saints, I don't hate their roster. I actually, even though what I said about Derek Carr maybe didn't paint him in the greatest light a little bit earlier, I don't mind him on New Orleans, but I think their coaching staff, led by Dennis Allen, is a joke. I like Bryce Young and Frank Reich as a tandem in Carolina, but year one, and then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask, massive questions at the most important position in the game. So with that, let's tee up this, and then we'll do our predictions here. What is your all-too-early Super Bowl 58 prediction? Who will represent the NFC and the AFC in Las Vegas? If you want to bet on some NFL futures, like who plays in Super Bowl 58, make sure you do so with our sportsbook partner, BetUS, offering a 125% deposit bonus at chatsports.com/bet. Promo code CHAT125. You take a look at the Super Bowl 58 odds, the two teams that were the representatives in the Super Bowl, Kansas City Chiefs 6-1 odds, Philadelphia 7-1 odds. After that, a lot of really quality teams. Buffalo Bills at 9-1, San Francisco 49ers, and Cincinnati Bengals at 10-1 odds. Without further ado, audible drum roll, please. AFC playoff predictions. I think the number one seed in the conference still going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. Where have they gotten worse? Now, if Chris Jones doesn't report to Kansas City, they can't find a way to appease him, make him happy, and if he can't return to that team, that's a massive problem. Outside of that, you still have Patrick Mahomes. You still have Andy Reid in an offensive league. Kansas City Chiefs, one less win than last year. They do finish at 13-4. Number 2 seed, it was the Buffalo Bills last year. I think the Cincinnati Bengals claimed that 2 spot with a final record of 12-5. Joe Burrow's going to come back soon. T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, really good. Joe Mixon found not guilty of some of the charges that he was facing. Lou Amarillo, with what he's been able to do with that defense, has been really impressive. I like Cincinnati and the makeup of that roster. And then you look at that number 3 spot. One of the teams that I think is going to make a pretty big leap after only finishing one game above 500 last year, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. 2 things that you really need in this league: good head coach, good quarterback, Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence. They fit that bill, and I like what they've done the last 2 off seasons in building up that roster, as it was barren not long ago. The Buffalo Bills, ladies and gentlemen, I still think that they're a quality team. They need to find a way to help out Josh Allen by running the football. They did do that a little bit last year. James Cook was a big part of that. Buffalo Bills, they don't win as many games as last year, 2 less, but still in that 4th seed at 11-6. To our wild card teams, Los Angeles Chargers, no excuses, and if they have a porous season, Brandon Staley, we'll see ya. They're going to bring in a hot ticket offensive mind to help lead the charge with Justin Herbert after he signed that deal. The New York Jets last year, defense wasn't a problem. Robert Saleh's defense was a very good unit. Offense was awful. If they had just competent quarterback play, they may have made the playoffs, but they didn't get that. Big concern is obviously the offensive line going into this year. For those of you who have watched Hard Knocks, they've discussed that ad nauseum. But the Aaron Rodgers effect, I think, has been real. It's given this organization much-needed swagger, much-needed confidence that they can get over the hump and make it back to the playoffs for the first time in a long time. And I think that Aaron Rodgers is going to play more like the MVP from 2 and 3 years ago as compared to last year. Then the last playoff team, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to surprise people. I think we could see some regression from the Baltimore Ravens. Wouldn't surprise me if the Ravens are in this spot, but I kind of like what Mike Tomlin has going on. I'm a believer in Kenny Pickett. I think that George Pickens is really good. They have an excellent edge rusher, pretty solid defense. You know they're always going to be competitive. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers in a really difficult division get that last wild card spot. To the NFC, Philadelphia has arguably the best roster in the NFL. They do have a more difficult schedule coming up this year as compared to last year, but last year they fared really well, contrary to popular belief, against teams with a winning record. And this year, they have to get off to a fast start. If they do that, they can escape the middle portion of the schedule where they have to take on Aaron Rodgers. They have to take on Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, San Francisco 49ers. Travel to Seattle, starting fast is going to be important. And sometimes coming off that Super Bowl hangover, it's difficult to start fast. Number 2 seed, San Francisco 49ers. I think these are the 2 top teams in the NFC as far as talent goes. And I like both of their coaches, Nick Sirianni and Kyle Shanahan. After that, pretty big drop-off to that 3rd team. I think that 3rd team right now is the Detroit Lions. You can count me in as being a believer in Detroit here. I do think that they have the makings of winning the NFC North. And last year, how they finished the regular season, I was impressed with what Detroit did, and I think that Dan Campbell is doing a hell of a job. In that 4 seed, it's not because I think the Atlanta Falcons are going to be one of the top teams in the NFC, but they're playing in a porous division, and because they win the NFC South, they automatically slide in to that 4th spot like Jacksonville did last year. They do have a decent roster, and I like Art Smith as a coach. If Desmond Ridder is solid, I think the Falcons are going to be a pretty solid team. If he's not, they're going to be picking in the top 10 once again. Seattle Seahawks, don't sleep on what Pete Carroll has going on. They have some dogs on the defensive side of the football, 11-6, but because San Francisco wins 12 games this year, Seattle loses the division, and they're a wild card team. I'm not knocking Dallas. I still think they have a pretty solid roster. I am concerned about how they go from Kellen Moore to Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy has said, we want to run the ball. I think you win by passing it in this league. Last several NFL champions in the Super Bowl have not been top 10 in rushing the football, so a little bit concerned there. Not a lot of depth at wide receiver, but Dallas Cowboys still good enough to win 11 games this year. And I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings, not with much confidence. Final year of Kirk Cousins' deal. It's the first time he's had the same play caller for back-to-back seasons in a long time. I still like the roster here, especially offensively, of course, with Justin Jefferson. Brian Flores could be a big, big upgrade over what they've had as defensive coordinator the last couple of years. They had to outshoot and outscore a lot of teams a year ago. Minnesota Vikings 10-7. They get that 7th seed. What did I get wrong? Where did I go wrong? Let me know. Type F Chase, RIP Chase. You can rip me all you want, but they're my predictions. So you make your predictions down below in the comments section, and don't forget to subscribe.